Dr. George Schwab, professor of Old Testament at Erskine Theological Seminary. And I was just thinking about Genesis chapter 1 and how I teach that. I wrote a white paper on it and the interface between science and scripture. Part of that's been published in the Dictionary of Biblical Imagery. But that's not what I do in lecture. What I do in lecture is I try to show how what is happening in the first chapter of Genesis, regardless of what you think about science and scripture, what is actually happening there is God is building a temple for himself to dwell in. He says in Isaiah, what house will you make for me? Talking about the temple, right? What house will you make for me? The sky is my roof, right? The earth is my footstool. What house will you make for me? Where will I find my resting place? God's resting place is his temple, his abode, where he puts his feet up, according to Isaiah 66. That's what we see happening in the first chapter of Genesis, that ends with God finding his resting place, having a place to sit on his throne and begin his rule. And this is how I teach the first chapter of Genesis. This is what is happening. God is making for himself a sanctuary, a temple to dwell in. And we see that in so many ways. The tabernacle is modeled on the sanctuary of the whole universe. The tabernacle is filled with images of the universe, like, for example, a menorah, oil-fed lamps. By the way, in Genesis chapter 1, the word used for the lights in the sky, when used as physical, visible lights, it only occurs in one other place. It's not the usual word for light. The only other place you ever see it is in the description of the oil-fed lights in the tabernacle, helping to connect the two. That the universe itself is a sanctuary and the tabernacle is a microcosm of that. Later, the temple is the same way. It's full of imagery of the creation. With the menorah being stylized trees, we actually have one of the ivory pomegranates from it in a museum in Europe. The basin for washing is called the ocean, right? The universe is what the temple points away to, because the universe itself is God's temple. And that is how I teach Genesis chapter 1.